copy and but the only assistance that we would give that person is to show them how to look at the book. The copy machines are there. We also have from the early 17 and 1800s, the really old black background microfiche stylus. So we have a portion of them online. We go back, I believe, to maybe 1950 or maybe the early 40s, but it's with the way we've gotten that far is from the State of Connecticut Grant Fund, especially funded to recreate documents and research.
Mr. Gormley, I know we had a presentation some years ago about paperless city hall. So on the city real estate tax liens, is that something that could be transmitted digitally in a machine readable format, so somebody, if they wanted to go to the clerk's office and punch in an address, could pull up a tax lien that way?
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly look into that. For you again, the book is really brought over the tax collector. So, that's the way that it's been for many years. I can certainly look at our system to see if it's produced digitally, and get back to the chair for this committee.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Seems like an opportunity to maybe save our residents money while they're looking for this information. But thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Before we move to all the rest, I'll also remind colleagues that any attempts to digitize documents itself takes significant resources. So the resources will be coming from somewhere. And so, but there's a good question in the future about the smartest possible way to use resources for the transmission and sharing documents. Sounds like a potential follow-up conversation that we should be having in the future. Thank you all for your time. Next up, you
I just want to confirm if I heard this correctly. They are going out
Dollar. It's a $1, but it will take whatever you have to equal. It'll take no credit cards. No credit card. We do have additionally this Prism company offers us a card. You can buy a card, like a credit card, for $1 amount, and add money to that card. And as you come in, you won't have to bring out. You add money to that card, and it will deduct.
Thanks for that clarification. And then I see on one of the, I'm looking for the cost over the 5 years. This is 46,109. What is the cost over the of this agreement?
Scrolling on this spreadsheet now.
I will look that up as well because I'm looking at the laptop. So, but I believe the lease amount was $350 for the monthly cost. For
okay, yeah, you just refresh my memory. I did do that in online in our documents. The documents we have here are, you don't have all of them. But thanks for that. So $650 per month. $350 per month for the 5 years.
correct, and then again, as we had mentioned prior to COVID, we were collecting about $200 weekly. So that was about $10,000 for the year, which again offset the cost of the copier lease itself.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Kessler. Further questions from colleagues on this item? Further questions from colleagues on this item? Seeing none, I will did know that the multi-use agreement we're asked to consider this evening dates from July 1st, 2022, which is in month ago, to September 30th, 2027. And of course, it's the preference of the board to approve large contracts before their actual terms. And so do you have anything to say about what prevented your office from coming to us sooner with this item?
Yes, prior to myself being the deputy clerk, I did handle some of these contracts. And then the process of getting it submitted was not familiar with the process. The clerk is familiar with some things, but sometimes we miss each other. But we worked on this for a while and we thought that it was just going to be renewable. We don't know right now. I know that it's not that way, and I have to work on this earlier before the contract comes out, the lease agreement comes out.
Thank you for that explanation. And so the company has been fine with continuing with the terms of the prior lease during this intervening period where there's no lease or anything.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. And Mr. Murphy, perhaps if you answer this question already, then I apologize for missing it, but what's the unit rate difference between this new lease agreement and previous lease?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll get you that information. This week, unfortunately, have that.
It was 399. The previous agreement was 399 a month.
So that's getting a better rate than you have before?
Yes, and then we put upgraded new machines.
Well, gosh, that's really important information. I would put that up front. Did you say that? Well, then I apologize for missing that. Thank you very much. Perhaps we just emphasize it for maybe.
No, but I think it is, what, it's less.
Great, thank you very much. Any further questions from colleagues? Seeing none, is there anyone from the public who wishes to testify on this item? The proposed multi-use lease agreement between the city of New Haven and Prison Office Solutions. Anyone from the public who wishes to testify on this item? And for a third time, does anyone from the public wish to testify on this item? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for your time in this conversation. We've lost another thing. We apologize. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you for letting us know. We'll keep them in our prayers. Item number 2 is an ordinance amendment in regards to the pension of certain employees and in regards to meeting certain city staff into key employees. So if the city staff who are presented as an example. All right, gentlemen, I believe you know the drill, name and address, and don't push the button on the.
Steve Brandy, 470 Lakeview Drive, Fairfield, County.
Sean Madison, 279 Lebanon Avenue, North Charleston. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the Finance Committee. Appreciate you all here before you. Here to talk about some tools for the administration and improvement and city employees. It is no secret, it is a changing world. And it is ever more so difficult to both attract and retain city employees. We do not seek to be competing with the private sector. We cannot possibly match the private sector in its day. But we do try to be competitive in with other municipalities for those that are interested in public service work. These, it's often, items before you around salaries and benefits, whether they be union contracts or executive management contracts, are always sensitive and delicate matters. You all interact with city employees, you all interact with department heads, and various people. So I appreciate your time, and I understand the sensitivities here, and I think we're about. So what is before the body is a request to change the executive and confidential employees handbook to do two things. First is a change to Article 18, which is the pension section of the executive. And it's around fairness and some equity. Currently, there are some positions within the city, within executive management, that because they are not enumerated in ordinance as a department head or in charter as a coordinator, but do the same similar types of work and responsibilities. If you begin your career with the city of New Haven as a member of one of our bargaining units, pay and serve, and then become, when you're in one of these positions, you go into executive management, you are treated differently in your pension. This change that we're asking for you to consider would eliminate that inequity. Second, what's before you would seek to move 3 positions into what's known as key employees. The way the executive management works, it's got a various set of ranges, most like a lot of union contracts do, top to bottom, depending on the type of job. And then there is the top designation, which is known as key employee. That range goes from 100 to 169. But what it allows the city to do is to negotiate with the individual to try to come to an agreement and create a wage that is a little bit more attractive, especially for jobs that we find to be vitally important to the operation of the city. Job that requires a very specific set of skills, and that job and that training is one that's in high demand on the marketplace. Just puts us at a little bit more firm footing. And we're trying to do so for a number of reasons. Again, it's around attraction and retention. The gentleman sitting beside me, his last day is on Friday, your HR manager, and this is one of the positions that we are trying to enumerate as a key employee. Looking to in that process, we would like to again move 3 of these positions into key employee. Happy to talk about those specific positions, but I think maybe Steve can talk to you about why we find it to be beneficial in terms of attracting talent and leadership and some of our most.
So, okay, so what we've been experiencing, as Sean said, we really have seen over the last 3 to 4 years in particular, kind of a change in, and this is in general, in our ability to attract people to any position. So where we used to have a couple hundred people sign up for an administrative assistant test, we're getting 20 and 30. So that's not unusual. That's happening to everybody in the private sector, municipal sector. It's just an indication, I think, that, you know, the market out there is different than it was. And it certainly is impacting our ability to attract people. I think that when it comes to the higher level positions of executive management, where individuals have, you know, a very broad range of responsibility in departments that are not overly staffed, in my opinion, you need to ensure that we can do everything we can to attract people who can come in and do the job and manage those departments the way they need to be managed. And I think that has become increasingly difficult over my 12 years here. We've seen, I think, as an example, that when I started, I believe there was one job in the key employee category. We're now at 6. I think that's just indicative of the fact that the market has moved beyond what the salary ranges in the executive level were designed to do back in 2011. And I think that, you know, in today's market, you need to give the administration as much flexibility as you can in terms of making a job attractive to someone. When we know, regardless, as Sean said, we're never going to be able to compete with, you know, the private sector, but we do need to be able to offer some flexibility and make those jobs attractive to be able to attract.
So, for sake of clarity, positions that we are talking about specifically on the pension section that are not covered, defined as a department head or a coordinator, but do like similar work. One is the budget director, 2 is the chief of staff, and 3 being the unfilled position of chief technology officer, which is still there. As for the key employee designation, we would like to designate the budget director position as a key employee position, as well as to designate the HR manager position as a key employee. Happy to begin answering any and all questions.
Thank you, gentlemen. Before we move to the committee, questions for the committee members, I think it might be useful for you to be a little bit more explicit about exactly how the pension rules change. This is a question of time, it's a question of pension multiplier, what is it? And then same thing for the second on the key side.
So what happens with the pension is right now, if you are a union member and then you move into executive management in one of these 3 positions, it is based on the changes in the multiplier from overall, the overall percentage that you draw on the pension from 20 to 40, which is where department heads and on the question of the key employees, again, we did not, we haven't set a salary in this. This is something, of course, the executive handbook says that once we reach an offer with an employee on a key employee, that goes before the board for approval. But those again are between 100 and 169. We would probably, for the one that is most pertinent right now, being the HR manager, we would probably see.
To summarize, the pension rule change allows for that particular position, that person to have a greater pension and not lose credit, and not be disadvantaged from the internal person
Coming under the
end up with a bigger percentage of their last 5 years' highest salary.
Yes.
Okay. And then key employees, it means that the city can negotiate with those prospective hires and offer them more money in annual salary than but the labor rates, normally limited.
Correct.
But the budget still has to have a budgeted amount that would pay for that, otherwise the transfer would have to be asked for, requested, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, just wanted to get the basic facts out on the table, and then we go. Thank you, gentlemen. So now we'll have questions from colleagues, members of the committee on this item. I'll start with Alder Hesse.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While you are explaining everything, just explain, can you also elaborate on what I'm reading here? It would only apply if they were formerly a city union member and changed jobs into a leadership position, which is what you said. So if we hire someone from the outside that did not go through those steps, does this still apply?
Correct.
And how?
Yeah, if they came, again, if they're doing a department head job or a coordinator job, they are covered and they get to 40%. If what this does is changes it just specifically for the positions that are not enumerated by charter or by ordinance as a department head or coordinator, but the chief of staff, chief technology officer, and the budget director do a lot of the same type leadership work as department heads and coordinators. If they came up through the union, they participated, it only covers them that come up through the union.
Okay, so again, if I apply for the position, I'm Joe Schmo, I apply, I do not qualify.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay. Want to make sure I understood that correctly. But how about the pay scale? We're using that as leverage to negotiate, right?
On the
Same thing.
on the key employees, and yes, designation, correct. And again, we haven't sent anything to the board on the pay scales when they're attempting to get the designated versus key employee.
Now, is this going to create any animosity with other departments?
I think, again, the executive and confidential employee handbook and the scales have, last time that across the board, they were adjusted was in 2011, about 11 years ago. And during that time, we have fallen behind the rest of the state in a lot of ways. The only thing that's come before the board during that time has been adjustments to identifying certain employees as key employees. As you've seen, some of those numbers have grown as key employees. It kind of begs the question of eventually this body taking a look at those salary scales in totality. Because we are falling behind on many of our department head positions. So can I honestly say that there's animosity? I haven't served or spoken to every single department head or coordinator about the changes, but I would tell you that they generally support us attempting to hire the best possible people we can and to keep the best people we can in leadership roles.
How will these changes affect our current budget if approved by the board?
Well, any salary changes would have to be, depending on when they were enacted in mid-budget year, would have to be mitigated, and it's either through, various sources, transfers, and or lapse salaries. Second, the impact on any pension changes, if somebody were to immediately take their pension, yeah, that would be an impact. To the exact dollar amount on what the changes are, I couldn't tell you on salaries because it depends upon what part of the year it would take effect and how you know, if it was, where that transfer, or if it could be covered by lapse salary. You know, I can't answer the dollar amount question on the salaries.
And just lastly, we're looking at a range of 100 days to 169.6. What is the current range for these positions? And also we're requesting 145 already upfront for the HR position.
Yeah, so if, I think I had shared with you all sort of the two positions and where they fall on the scale. They are 111 for the HR manager and 129, 125, 129 for the budget director. And both of those are at the highest point on our range.
Have an idea of what the IT position will actually compared to other salaries that you said.
Yeah. If you look at like top five, top seven in the state of municipalities, they are, 145 to 70. Again, having someone to serve as a chief technology officer is very competitive.
Thank you, Alderman Bassett. And before we move on with our queue, which includes Alder Earl, Alder Walker Myers, and Alder Winter, I'd like to recognize our colleague, Alder Absalom Smith, who is here, and also former Alder Shelley. Since Alder Earl is next on the queue, I will wonder if either Winter, Alder from first ward would share the microphone. Thank you, sir. Alder Earl.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. For the presentation. And I want to see my question by saying that our city workers appointed at work. I think that all the names that have been mentioned for all positions that have been it's not a great job. So I no way debating their pace in especially today's economy, and especially the Northeast Connecticut, where we need money here. But I do want to ask, out of these 7 positions that I see under key employees, and I'll say about 4 that have recently hired after 2011, and now additional 2.5. Whose responsibility is it to change the 3140 boards? And the reason I'm asking that question is I'm just wondering why we're going around key employees rather than just updating that handbook to reflect a higher salary.
Appreciate the question and the thought. And, your thought is completely logical. We're here dealing with this. One is because, again, the gentleman to my left here is leaving, and I've got to be expeditious about this. Second, I'm also trying to deal with some inequities on some of the pension for a few positions. Again, that have come through the union and are only for those that do the permanent coordinator work, but are treated the same. So we're just trying right now at this point to deal with some of the issues that got in the city,
Just not sure to keep that back.
trying to deal with some of the issues we have in front of the city right now. But I would appreciate, as well as, I think all of our executive management at the right time, having a more thorough conversation about the pay ranges, and salary scales. Again, I think you all are as committed as we are in wanting to see the city's success and the best possible services to residents that requires the best people and keeping and recruiting the best people is key, and the handbook is the vital for that.
Thank you, and I do appreciate your urgency, getting these salaries in place, especially unfortunate project, our manager. But could you just, it's my last question, I'm just wondering, what is the process of getting the 3144 executive handbook updated?
Just for point of clarity, we're talking about the executive management, 3144 is
Oh, yes, yeah,
So,
that's my academia knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to let Steve talk a little bit about the history, some of the last change and some changes that he brought to the board. But this is, we kind of put it together and we bring it to the board. We have a conversation about it, what we think about it, what you all think about it. We kind of go back and forth.
That's sufficient.
Yeah, I mean, simply put,
labor was involved.
no, the process is that this is really between the administration, but ultimately it's the board of aldermen that has the responsibility and the authority over the executive management.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, gentlemen. Next on the queue is Alderman Myers,
Thank you, but you've been passing this issue. My question was.
Alderman Myers says the question for answer, and we move to Alderman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are you able to provide any sort of preliminary estimate of changes to the actuarially required pension contribution as a result of the 2040 increase?
Again, it would depend upon the specific salary of the individual, that's what would, that's what would matter. So it depends upon how much that individual is making when they retire and left. But so to the exact dollar for these three positions, because one's not filled, one's not covered under this because I didn't come up through the union in this. So it would be, unless I have the exact salary, exact dollar cost is.
Okay, so you're saying we don't know for the one position that this would apply to.
I could tell you that just doing the math, it would be about $52,000.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Winter. I think just piggybacking on Alderman Winter's question, I think it's useful just to say a word about how many individuals. I think there's a way to give some sense of the scope and scale of the detrimental impact by talking about how many positions people are gonna get pensions from the SERF. This is one position of how many. Give some sense of the scope and scale we're talking about.
Well, I don't run the pension plan, but I can tell you that, we have about 500 plus active members of SERF plus several thousand people that are already getting a pension. So adding one change that is going to impact at present one person. And as Sean pointed out, unless people come to these executive management jobs from internal and from a certain position, so they're not going to be eligible for it, so it only applies to a pretty small universe of potential.
Thank you. I think it's correct to say, as you did, Mr. Madison, that it's impossible to get a perspective, because there's a lot of factors that won't be knowable until after the first fire, at which point it's long that they're decided to vote on. But we are talking about a fund that has 500 people currently working for the benefit of 100,000 retired. So it's changing. Right now, but it's small. Nevertheless, our job is to look at every single change and its potential impact going forward. Further questions from colleagues of these two city staffers on this item? Seeing none, we're going to move to the next item, which is the reclassification. And is this all for you this evening, Mr.
I believe this is it, yes.
Well, then let me just say, for myself, and I believe for others, that we thank you very much for your service. I think that the good fortune of working with you on issues related to benefits, and it was a real pleasure. And I appreciate your honesty, your hard work, and wish you well.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun working here, and appreciate it. Thank you.
Enjoy your time.
Thank you.
Is there any member of the public who wishes to testify on item 2, which is about changes we were discussing? I see a member of the public. I see one member of the public. Please come forward, sir. As you come forward, please be reminded to give your name and address for the record and to use the microphone.
Shafi, Reducible 670, Avenue, New Connecticut 06511. I'm here to so I do want to touch upon what was just presented before you, because even though this is only 2 positions, and you all know I'm a civil servant, so I believe in all the work that our people do. Once we open this door, it's open. And so we don't know what will come after it, and what will come after, and what will come after. I did understand the fact that Mr. LeBraley, who I did work with on several occasions, we're going to lose him. We're going to lose a lot of knowledge and experience. But the issue here is about the actuary of the pension. And there are other pensions within our city, such as police, there's fire, there's 844, there's several other pensions that are here. So the question becomes, what is going to be the long-term impact of this change? If you add $10,000 on somebody's pension on a payout over 30 years, that's $300,000. So that's a change. That has to be budgeted in. If you do that across the board, maybe 2 or 3 positions, those numbers will change dramatically. The pension is also based on age. If you go down to 200 Orange and talk to them, they are basing the pension, especially for police officers, based on death age. So all of these things have to be taken into consideration when we start talking about adjusting or adding people to the pension. So a suggestion would be, if it's about having a retirement benefit, why can't they add a 401k to the benefit as they did the police department? The new workers that came on, the new officers that are out there putting their life on the line, they don't have full pension. They have partial pension, they have partial 401k. So that way, that burden is off the taxpayers. And what I would just actually in this moment beg you all, that in this moment where we're running the city, we're running it for future generations. We're not running it for today. We're actually running the city for 3 decades from now. And it's our responsibility to make sure that when we make decisions today, that our children, our grandchildren, our daughters, our sons will actually be able to afford to live here. Jumping from a 20 to 40% contribution, that's significant. And then you have to ask, with the amount of salary that would change and the amount of payout that might come before that person hits their death benefit per se, will they have made the contribution into the pension to equal out the distribution that they're gonna be getting over a course of time? It takes time for that money to build up, and then you actually get back. And then the other thing, my final piece is, do we even know where that particular pension fund is in terms of its return? Is it below return? Is it at the return? Have we met our contribution to it as a city and kept up with the payments to make sure that it's balancing out so that we don't get stuck? I'm not here to shine anybody's perimeter that want to get a raise or keep their position. But what I am saying is, if it's about having retirement, 401k is the best option, or a 413 or something to that a Roth fund. It allows them to put their money away and have it for another day without holding the taxpayers 20 years from now, 15 years from now, in a situation where we can't even afford to pay the pension out or something. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Any questions, comments? Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would any other member of the public wish to testify on this item? If you'd like to do so, please raise your hand. Any further members of the public wishing to testify on this item? And for a third time, is there a member of the public here who would wish to testify on this item? Seeing none, we move item 3, ordinance amendment to reclassify a number of general fund positions. We ask the city staff to come forward. And just by way of explaining the procedure for folks who are in the audience this evening, if you have to know about concluded, we are hearing presentations about an item, asking questions, asking for public testimony, but we're not actually talking to each other about that. That's because we don't do that until the end of the meeting. But after everything has been heard, we'll close the public portion and then we'll deliberate. And that's when we hear committee members talk with each other about what they think about the taxes. And this is one of them that is requested to go into the group. So for those of you who are interested to hear how this turns out, you'll have to wait here, because that's not that helpful. Please, names and addresses.
Michael Gormley, 45 Jefferson Road, or Connecticut City Controller. All right, thank you, committee members. We are here to seek approval to reclassify 4 positions as previously adopted within the budget. These positions are being reclassified for operational needs of the city departments. Also, one is based on a memorandum of understanding from a few years ago as well, which was noted in the ordinance. And we are not seeking transfers. So let me just start out by saying we are not seeking budgetary transfers for these positions because we plan to hire within the budgeted salary of the old position. Or if any union rules apply regarding promotions, which are listed in the union contract, there's enough funding within each of these departments due to vacancies to cover that additional cost. So I just want to note for the record on why normally, or sometimes you would see a budget transfer associated with these reclassifications. That is the reason why there is no budgetary transfer requested. Looking at these positions, just going down the line, which Ms. Barbero and myself will kind of switch off depending on the department. We have also stayed within the line of keeping them within the same units. Now, there is an exception with the last one, which will be explained in the presentation for that particular position. But we have stayed within the classifications of each union, as we discussed often within these transfers, which is kind of borrowing the union unless there's mitigating circumstances to changing that position. So the first position on the list is within our human resources department. What we are requesting is changing a personnel analyst to a senior personnel analyst. Now, I've already seen And within the letter that was submitted, it said upon vacancy. So I will turn it over to Ms. Bombero.
Sure, I think Steve somewhat alluded to this before, the city is seeing an unprecedented number of vacancies right now, and attraction for those positions, and continues to be a challenge, and you also know, we are bound by the rules of civil service, so in order to fill a position, in the general office, classified position, we need to perform a test, score that test, and then hire from the already of three. We currently are in the process of creating a list for senior personnel analyst. We do not currently have lists at either title of senior personnel analyst or personnel analyst. It's promotional or external candidates. They're creating a list because there's a vacancy at board ed. Because we have so many vacancies right now, the goal is to minimize the number of tasks we need to do. Since both titles perform similar functions, if a situation occurs where the personnel analyst is vacant, and we'll have an active senior personnel analyst list, the goal would be to use that list to fill the position at a slightly higher level, so that we can maintain the functions in HR and not lose time trying to create another list and creating more work for HR when we have a vacancy. So that is the idea of that.
Do you want to just over the list?
So the next item on the list is within the assessor's office. What we're asking for is to take the assessment info clerk and change it to an administrative assistant. So the assessment info clerk is a position that is currently vacant, has been vacant for a few months now due to a promotion. As Ms. Bombero said, the thinking behind this particular change was, again, with the civil service process. The info assessment clerk and the administrative assistant both perform similar functions when looking at their job. We actually currently have an administrative assistant in the front area performing a lot of the same tasks that an assessment info clerk does now. So because there's currently a civil service list that will possibly be certified for administrative assistant, we're looking to change this position so we can hire right away within the assessor's office. Again, they've had a number of turnover this year. They have about 4 vacancies within their office right now. So the change in this position will help us expedite the hiring process faster within that position. So at least we can get them about within the office. Again, this is all within the same union, 884. So both positions are within 884. The job descriptions are very similar, so there wouldn't be any union issues in regards to the work being performed. And as I mentioned, we already have an administrative assistant in the front area currently. The next position is within parks and public.
Again, it's in a similar vein, the logic behind this. Again, it is another vacant position. It is another unique title in the city. So the goal here is to move the title to management policy analyst. It is a more versatile job title. Also near to performing that part as we both held position in the past. And it is another position that exists elsewhere in the city. So we will be administering the task once before to fill multiple positions. The title, again, it has more versatility, performs many of the same functions. So it will speed up the hiring process. I'll take the next one as well. The next one is police services. It's another fill position. This one here, the logic is a little different. We actually were fearful. We were going to have a retirement in this position and began the process for filling it. Fortunately, the incumbent decided to stay a little longer, which gave us a little bit more time to work on this. But whenever we have a vacant position, we take a look at the job description to do an update. And at that time, We reviewed an old MOU that dates back to early 2000s that actually binds us to move the position to 3144 when it is vacant. You'll note in the title, it says record supervisor. So the functions of the position already have many of those supervisory functions. So we will be moving that position over to the management supervisors union and giving it a slightly unique title as to not confuse it with the previous position. But we'll be reflecting the spirit of the MOU, which is included in your packet if you have any questions.
Thank you. Before you continue, let me just take a moment to recognize our colleague, Alderman Morrison. Please continue.
I believe we are all set, Mr. Chair, and will entertain any questions on the committee.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We will now entertain questions from our committee members. Questions? Let's go with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if I answered or not, but other salary changes.
No, so we are looking to hire within budgeted, close to the budgeted salaries. Again, the only way that we will go above the salaries is if each union contract has promotional rules, right? So if you're in a lower job class and you get promoted to a higher job class, there's a minimum salary you must pay based on the promotion itself from going to a higher job class. Again, that's based on the union contract. Right now, that's the only way we would see that we're going to exceed the salary that we're budgeted for the board. Again, we wouldn't know that until the civil service testing process is completed. Who makes the top 3 ranks?
Also important to know within each of these departments, there is enough flat salary to cover any of the differences between those changes. So it wouldn't have any bottom line budgetary.
And to be honest, I'll confess there's something happened during the year and it did come before you guys for a transfer like.
How long is the list? So we're gonna
Task
start.
force and civil service. List is good for up a year when it's initially certified. It can be extended for up to a year past that. One of the things we are finding is a lot of our lists are going to go quite quickly. As you guys are familiar with the job market right now, it's really an employees job market. There's a lot of competition out there. A lot of movement, so that's one of the reasons we're struggling a lot. Our last AA list was exhausted within about a month's time, so that's why Mike's joining on this right now, since we anticipate an AA list to be certified next month.
Thank you, Alderman Bessa. Questions from colleagues on this item? I have a question, and it's probably a fairly small mechanical question, but when positions reclassify, we pass the board, which then has the effect of changing the title of that position as it is published in the budget. And there's not a figure associated with that. If a hire is made that's above that dollar figure, then you need to transfer amount. You need to come back to us, right, for amendment to the budget to reflect the budgetary figure associated with the position that is greater than what is actually printed on the sheet.
But again, Mr. Chair, you are correct. I think it will depend on the process that plays out with each of these positions, which again, I've come to the board with budget transfers, different type of budget transfers. I have no issue with you finding that any of these exceed the budgeted amount from the original position. I can certainly submit a budget.
But upon reflection, it seems unlikely that it would, given that we're already well into the fiscal year. So I guess the question is, if you have an annualized salary for that person, well, now, however, they're only working half the fiscal year, the actual paid out amount is less than the
Correct, that's where Ms. Bombero's answer on the last salaries come in, and again, you know, as you all mentioned, unprecedented amount of vacant positions. Almost every city agency has had a vacant position for more than one this fiscal year, so, and we're only in September, so, correct, I think this is one of those areas where I will be taking a look at, where these are hired, as the civil service process plays out and if needed, submit the necessary paperwork. But again, based on right now, we have enough last salary. Now, of course, anything can change during the year outside of these positions that is not last salary. So again, I think it's just mine. What happens.
Obviously, any changes to the positions would be reflected in next year's budget, which would show different amounts of those positions. Appear to occur.
Correct.
Thank you for going on that mindful journey with me as I got to the mechanics of changing the position. Questions from colleagues on this item? Or let me just check to make sure there's no one who hasn't asked a question yet who would like to ask a question. Seeing none, all present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and this may or may not be the place to ask this, but I know that 8840 for CSEP, because their contract has not been settled yet, so I'm wondering where we are with that and how it will affect these 84 positions, if it does.
Well, as you know, labor relations negotiates a lot of the contracts. We have about seven contracts now that are within the labor relations realm. Your question really goes towards the overall 84 positions, right? So again, within the budget, we have contract reserve in there. So if 884's contract was settled, not just these positions within this ordinance amendment, but all the positions, we certainly take a look. We pay for any increases from contract reserve, as Alderman Marchand mentioned. The new adjusted salaries will be reflected in next year's budget. So again, we have the budget as passed by the Board of Alders with the funding and contract reserve if the contract is settled this fiscal year.
All set, Alderman. Further questions from colleagues? Seeing none. Is there a member of the public who wishes to testify on this item? Does any member of the public here wish to come testify on this item? Position reclassification. Position reclassification. And for a third time, anybody here wish to testify on this item? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is item number 4. This is the 1-year lease for the city of Virginia Health Department offices and public health center. Warren, are you starting solo on this one, sir?
Yes, sir.
Sure.
Michael Gorman, 45 years old, Director of Medicaid Acting Control. As the board knows, the health department currently have 54 members. We had a multi-year lease prior that ran out on June 3rd of the 2025. That was previously approved by the Board of Alders that expired on June 30th, 2022. The ordinance that you have before you enter into a 1-year lease with the owner of 54 Meadow Street, Gateway Partners, in the amount of $420,262. The reason this is before the Board of Alders is because this is a lease that exceeds $100,000. So again, this is 1 year, but the amount exceeds $100,000. This is not a bid or anything because it's a lease. We're currently at the property. So that is why this is before you. In the fiscal year 22-23 Board of Alder approved budget, the money was allocated within the finance department to cover this lease. So the money is in place, but again, we are currently at that location. To kind of give you a sense, if you remember, I believe it was a year and a half ago, we did buy 424 cows. So that is where we are planning on locating the health department and the clinic itself. Giovanni is in our city engineer, is currently working on that. The plan is for the city to make every effort to have the health department within that space going into next fiscal year. So again, that's why you have a 1-year lease report. But again, I'm stressing that it's our effort to have them in. Again, we still have supply chain issues and other stuff going on. Giovanni is currently hard at work in making that space useful for the clinic and the health department offices themselves. So just to kind of give you an insight on where we are, the design phase of that was complete from Giovanni for Chapel Street. The utilities and some others are currently enabling the work to get done. The demolition has started, and he's continuing the contract construction process to try to get the health department to move within that space. Again, our plan is to have the health department to start moving in that space around February or March of this year. Now, we will still be utilizing 54 Main Street as well, because you have office space, you have IT, which is a whole nother animal all in itself. And one of the most important pieces is you have the clinic. So again, we also don't want to disrupt services within the clinic itself. But as I mentioned, the plan right now is to have the health department within 44 Chapel Street next fiscal year. We can certainly update the board on the progress through the engineer's office. If this committee would like just to see where the progress is. Again, we'll also get a sense that we're doing the budget for the next fiscal year too as well. That will kind of give us a sense of the project as well. On what we have to submit in that budget, whether maybe, if we're running 2 months behind, a 2-month lease or 6, whatever the case is. But we're trying to make sure to ensure that that may not happen. So with that, Mr. Chair, I will entertain any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Barney. Questions from members of the meeting? On the side, Alderman Myers and Alderman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Gorman, you said that we're running like 2 months behind. You believe you have the option to do a month to month with this current, with the current place that we're in, or I know some leases, they do 6 months at a minimum. I'm just interested in that. Do you think you have that ability to go month to month?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the vendor, gaming partners has certainly been understanding and willing to work with us. I'm hopeful that people would, understand the situation and if we need to go on month to month again, depending on their feeling as well, especially having an entity like a clinic in there. But that is our hope that, we actually don't get to that point and have everyone move in, we would know when we start negotiations with that vendor. And I think that's very important that working through the engineer's office, we stay on top of the project.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is this rate comparable to other buildings in the area? It's high. I have an 8% increase compared to last year.
I can certainly get the statistics through the chair of the committee. I think that's something I would have to look at economic development. Unfortunately, that's not really my ground as far as the market rate, but I can certainly take a look. But unfortunately, we also don't have a lot of options when it comes to Meadow Street, because I think one of our number one barriers really is we have a public clinic, which does good use and is for public consumption, but I think that's not something we can move off in a couple of weeks, right? There's a lot of equipment, there's a lot of space, everything else. But I can certainly do the chair to get you, through economic development, some comparable market rates to that area.
We'll take that. You would like to make that request to the chair? Or
What is the pro rata soft part? Is that additional, those are additional fees on top of the rent total cost?
Yeah, so again, that's a term that's used within that leasing, that's really like what they call hard and soft operating costs. In a lot of leases, the leasing is responsible for, like utilities and just other areas. In this lease, we call it hard and soft operating costs. But that's normally what would be spelled out in a normal lease on like utilities and other things.
Okay, thanks for that. So it's just operating costs that are responsible for, are not included in the lease agreement.
Correct.
Okay. And do you know if we negotiated at all? I know it's only for a year, which is great because it'd be nice to finally get into our own building where we don't have to worry about these payments, but everything's negotiable.
Yes, we did, negotiate with the vendor, for the 8%. Yes, unfortunately, I mean, it was certainly an increase, but, that's kind of where we agreed to.
thank you all for that, and you know the request to be unique.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Gormley, for your presentation. Given that the current contract has fully expired, are we currently on a month-to-month with this vendor?
Yes, I mean, there's a legal obligation because we're occupying that space that we have to pay them. I think that's one of the reasons we wanted to get this to the board of voters as quickly as possible as far as the timing. You know, there's communication between my office and the department, not like submitted now, but again, we kind of want to have an executed lease in place. Just for accounting and other standards, but we do have to pay them because we're occupying the space.
Yeah, I understand what the rent is fixed. And we're currently paying them under the terms of the previous agreement.
That was right. We I have to look at the other terms of the agreement to get the exact language, but we came to an agreement to pay at what we proposed because of some language in our college that I don't have off the top of my head, but we're currently paying that full rate of the increase because if this was passed by the board, we end up paying that alongside wait, but we're currently paying the agreed upon terms and the deal.
The previous agreement had options to renew. Were those annual options to renew?
So I believe the previous agreement that was approved by the board of voters was a 5-year lease with a 5-year option to renew, because this agreement goes back many years. With Gateway, the health department has been there for many years. So I believe that last agreement had a 5-year option to renew.
To President Walker's question about potential for future month-to-month renewals, is there any language in the contract for us to provide options for month-to-month renewals?
I believe most of our lease agreements do have language for option month to month, because we do understand that sometimes the leases are executed right at the end of the term. I can certainly do the chair to the agreement language itself, so that you can see. But most of our leases do have a month-to-month clause just because of when our fiscal year expires, and sometimes they're not even getting, especially if it doesn't have a it may not be exactly the first of the month.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Please follow up on that.
Gurley, thank you, Mr. Chair.
No further questions from colleagues on the side? Seeing none, I will ask if any member of the public wish to testify on item 5. No, item 4, which is the 1-year lease between the city of Haven partners for the meeting health departments. So, any colleagues wishing to testify on the side? For a third time, any member of the public wishing to testify on this item, please come forward or raise your hand. Well, seeing none, we're now going to move to item 5. This is in regards to a multi-year agreement between the New Board of Education and Schools Incorporated. Are the city staff, Board of Education staff requesting this approval? Are they here to make their presentation? Forward. I hope that there is also somebody here from the Board of Education who can notify board member Olson that item 6 will be coming up soon. Hello, sir. Name and address for the record.
Good evening. Paul Wilson, Director of School Choice for Union Public Schools, 195 Rayside Drive. Here's to request the Board of Alders to look at approve our 3-year contract for Schoolmate, which is a lottery product. As you know, we've been public school, we have a full district choice program. The vendor that we've used for the past, I'd say 8 years or so, that product has reached its shelf life and is no longer available to us. It's been brought up by our partner company. This is the company that has brought that up, and they have proposed to us a 3-year contract that we think is in our best interest to do. They are transitioning a lot of their team with them, so they're familiar with our algorithms, so there'll be less work, hopefully, for us to transition as we're starting to see brand new. And with going with the 3-year contract, they have insured us a price cut of $21,000 for the implementation fees. They're waiving that for us.
I believe okay. Yeah. I'm confused for a moment. But okay.
Okay.
Anything else you want to say about that?
That's it. We feel this is a good product. We have done several demos with them. We think it'll be easy for parents to understand, but we know differences in our process at all. It's just a new platform since we cannot use the older one. And we think that the 3-year contract is best for us financially to avoid that $21,000 implementation.
You're resolving.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Just so folks know, we're at 5, item 6 is not yet before us. But it will be before us. Okay. Thank you for your concise presentation. Anything else you'd like to add before we have questions?
I think that's all.
So, questions from members of the committee? All okay.
A couple of quick questions. One is, what is this software is needed in that contract? Do they have a plan? Did they explain the plan for you all? For upgrades and maintenance and all that?
We are confident that they will not be going out of business within the 3 years. The school choice lottery market is very a niche market. It's very small. They're actually buying other smaller companies out to take over the market. So we're pretty confident that they will be there for the 3 years and eventually longer.
That's hard to say. Well, anything happen for you. And then, the agreement is to cover from July 2022. We are in September. What have we done in the interim?
Yeah, so the old product, school choice, smart choice was the old product. That ended on June 30th. So July 1st was our anticipated date, but there's a lot of paperwork, as you know, so we have to go through the Board of Education first to get a green light and then come to use, so it's a waiting game. We're hoping to get things tied up and squared away soon so that we can begin the contract and do the implementation and all the data migration and training that needs to be done so we'll be up and running. But that is why it says July 1st. There just has been some delays in just hearing everything, getting everything, the paperwork all processed and heard by everyone.
Okay, so if we approve this, with the full board of Alders, then the documents are ready to be signed, because don't you start at the end of the year with the registration, et cetera?
The lottery, school choice lottery, and starts every year in February. So we are up against that time where we got to get things going and prep to make sure we're comfortable with everything on the district side and get teachers and everyone trained and then get tutorials out to parents. We've been reassured that the system we've seen it will function very much like it has the old system, just enhanced. So it will not be a learning curve for families.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Alderman. That's Alderman Marks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I heard you reference the old software we're no longer using anymore. You said that it won't be too much of a difference for families using it other than enhancements. So can you talk a little bit about what those enhancements might be?
Sure. So an issue that we've had previously is a lot of families will try to use do the application on their phone. And that is something we discouraged in all of our presentation in advance, and on the front page of the old application, it says, please do not do this on your phone. There were some compatibility issues with this new product. They are pretty certain, very certain that this will not be a problem, that parents are able to use their phone, they're invited to use and do the application on their phone. Whereas previously we saw some of the data not transfer over, so we advise and warn parents well in advance, please do not use your phone, come visit us, use our laptops or iPad or visit the school. So that, I think that's the major enhancement, just the user friendliness. There's also some SMS text capability that we can text them around their application after it's submitted as well. So we'll have those functionalities as well. For us, was good. It's like, hey, that's what families are using. It will give us communication at their fingertips, at our fingertips to communicate with families.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Marks. Further questions from committee? Alderman Winter.
You mentioned that some folks have tried this and liked it. What's the largest number of people who've been involved in testing this that we know will actually work on a large scale?
Testing as far as?
I guess what I'm thinking is like new software can often be challenging. There's often bugs or hiccups, especially when it's rolled out with a new organization. It's a different thing to hand it to someone in an isolated case and hey, what do you think of this? Than it is to have thousands of people use it. So I guess what I was asking is, has a larger scale test been done? And if not, in the next 5 months, will we be doing some kind of dry run on a larger scale with hundreds or thousands of testers?
Thus far in the wave of public schools, we have not done extensive testing. We have demoed the product, or we have shown the product. We have had several demos and asked questions about the functionality of what we know we would need. We feel very comfortable with that. It is not a new product in the sense like they just created it and then we took the market. They have, like I said, sort of cornered the market in, for lack of a better word. So other large districts in our state and throughout the country are also using them as well. Harvard Public Schools using them. A lot of other vendors, a lot of other officials. We have a lot of processes we're using our own products, Smart Choice, and they've reached out to me as well to get our sort of take like, hey, you guys run with them, we like it, we want to look to you. If that's any sort of confidence, I believe will be okay.
So we don't have a plan right now to do that kind of test. We feel like it's worked in other places, and that's good.
I would venture to say yes. On average, our application pool is about 7,000 applicants, which in the school choice world, compared to some of the larger cities like Chicago and New York, is very, 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 very small. So we're not looking at too many applications. And we have done mini lottery for our district before with school closures, where we did take the a Google form and manage it accordingly. So I'm very confident that the average of 7,000 applications every year can be handled. But I'm happy to get more information if needed from the vendor about their list of clients nationwide, if that is necessary. Appreciate it.
And one last question.
Would you like to make a request for that information?
Yes, please. I guess all that activity takes place on their system. The data that's collected that gets fed into our systems, there's some, I guess I'm asking, are there any interoperability questions in terms of making sure that once we've done all this within this system, we can take it out and use it in our system on our back.
So they will do all the hosting as our previous vendor did all the hosting as well, so that they will live with that. We have 100% pure access to the data, so we get to all of our data mining access to it, query it as to it. On the back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Questions from committee members? Just checking to see if anybody wants to ask. Seeing none, I'll address it.
Yes, sorry to ask this before, but I'm assuming an RFP went out to various, well, went out there. And if so, how many responded to it? And how did you select the?
We did not do an RFP or RFQ regarding this because the time frame we were notified that the product was going to no longer live, and that if we wanted to continue with the old product, the price it would be to continue on, which was exponentially more than what we pay each year to maintain the product. And because they were purchasing the old product in conversations with them, that they were able to take what we had and essentially enhance it, but meet our needs. We did not go through an RFP process and look at other vendors because, as I said, it's a small market. They are cornering the market. And we felt that it would be much more expensive and time consuming to go with someone that did not know the district versus going with a company that bought out our company, the company we previously used, and was able to transition everything accordingly and committed to work with us to make sure we're okay.
Interesting. What is customary? Do an RFP or RFQ? And I only say that because if we're just going with this one vendor because of everything you just mentioned, it almost seems unfair to not give someone else the ability to apply. Maybe they can do it for less. Just, I'm asking, what is the normal procedure and why? Why wouldn't we, even though under this time constraints, do an RFP?
That I cannot answer. This is the first time during my tenure as director that we've had the product is no longer available to us.
I guess for future, we all like to see different bids, you know, not get this price for our products. And that to me is a little alarming, because we should give everyone a fair chance to apply and see what options are available. So maybe you could take that message back to your authorities to use for future products and services. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Vesta. Further questions from colleagues? Alder Winter. For a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When did you find out that the previous software package would no longer be supported?
I'm not certain of the date of the month, date. I would say earlier this year, it was confirmed that June 30th would be the final date that they would be servicing our product. And if we wanted to continue with it, they did have the 1-year option. We could continue with them another year. But again, that price was exponentially more than what we were paying for each year. Each year we pay about $9,000 to maintain the product, which is very cost efficient, versus about $57,000 to maintain it after they're said they're no longer going to support it. So with that, he said, let's rather just go another direction.
Just to summarize, we're paying, they said if you want to stick with what you have, you're gonna pay 57. Or you can go with this other product we offer at the scale we've been provided here, first year is 33.
Essentially, yes. So we wanted to maintain the previous school smart choice product, which they would no longer support. It would be $57,000 roughly to say you can get a 1-year extension to use it. It will help you out to get through it, or you can allow, we have a new product we like to introduce to you. And here's the cost of that. I would like to say at this time, because we know there's a fiscal issue in the district, we've been proactive about that. We also run the lottery process for all of our charter schools. So one thing we did do is bring all of our charters on board to allow them, ask them, they all agree to support the cost of the product, at least for year 1. So all 7 of our charters have agreed to put in $2,000 for the first year. So a lot of that first year cost will be taken care of by our charters. But we do run the process for them, whereas previously they were not contributing anything. So that is a plus for the district as well to sort of pay for the product.
Is that only for the first year, or would that be an ongoing?
So
commitment to charters?
yeah, so we gave the charters an option. So we didn't want to, we'll put them in a chokehold. So we said you can do the year 1, or you can or commit to 3 years if you're our total contract. There was one charter that did say yes, we'll do it for the full 3 years. The other said they would do it for 1, and then evaluate the year each year thereafter. If they do choose not to participate, we would not be supporting their lottery process whatsoever or any of their marketing. They'd be totally solely on their own to recruit students and to do their own processes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Questions about? Seeing none, we're going to see if there's any member of the public who wishes to testify on this item. Is there any member of the public who wishes to testify on item number 5? Proposed contract between the Education and School Ministry Incorporated. For third time. Any member of the public who wishes to testify on this item? Seeing none, we will move on. Thank you very much for your presentation. And before we move to item 6, I actually want to ask for Michael Gormley, Director of Engineering Budget, to come back because there's a process question I'd like to ask him in regards to the items that we've already heard this evening. So perhaps I'll deal with you to tell him to come on over. He's not registering that. Perhaps our vice chair will do that. We have an important procedural question for him in regards to the items we've already discussed. So we'll do that, and then we'll move on to that. This won't take very long, and we'll be able to know that. So thank you everybody for your patience.
Oh, okay.
Michael Warren,
Thank you very much. We're going to discuss a number of orders, 1, 2, 3, that pertain to agreements between other entities, leases, contracts. And we know that the period of their duration, we've already started. And so that raises, we've already asked about what that is, so I'm not revisiting that, but I am asking about, you made mention in regards to one of the items that is important to move forward quickly. So I want to give you an opportunity to make any requests that you'd like to make to us in terms of our process and how things move through our process.
Absolutely, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the items, so you've heard a number of items before you. Position changes, our ordinance amendments, so those have to go through the full process. The item that we will actually make a request to expedite is the health department. again, we are already in that space, we are obligated to pay. As Mr. Chair mentioned, we gave the reason why that was submitted at this time. The vendor is anxious to get an executed lease in place, so we have all documents in place and executed. So what we would ask of this board is to discharge, if possible, the health department lease. I think that was pretty straightforward. As far as why I came before the board, and again, as I mentioned, and certainly keep related on the progress that I testified to regarding the health department. But we are asking to discharge the health department lease order so we can enter into an agreement with check vendor as quickly as possible, so we have everything on the books that we need to have related to that lease.
Thank you. That's the only item.
That is the only item request to.
We will take that on next week.
Thank you.
Okay, so that will come up during deliberation. We will now move to item 6. The request of the board of aldermen to review and investigate policies and procedures related to awarding contracts at the Board of Education. We received a letter from our former alder and current member of the Board of Education, Darnell Olson. We invite you please to come forward. We definitely want to hear about the issues that you're concerned about. I just want to make a quick comment that it's understandable that in discussing an issue like this, that it makes sense to examples. But what we won't be able to discuss tonight is any particular instance that is currently the subject of a legal dispute. If that comes up, I will cut off whoever is bringing that up, because we can't, as the board of alders, enter into a discussion of a matter that's currently being litigated. That puts the board in jeopardy. We're not going to do that. So whatever examples you wish to give, please choose some that are not the subject of current disputes, so that we will not follow those issues. Name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Darnell Golson, 66 West Hill Road, New Haven, Connecticut. Member, Board of Education, representing District 2. I do have some examples. I don't plan to raise any issues that are already not part of the public record. But if you think even that's too much, then I'm certainly willing to not discuss whatever issue we think this evening. Mr. Chair, I'd like to thank the committee for allowing me to testify this evening. I was an alderman 12 years ago. I've kind of stayed away from the board, once you leave. But I've had more contact with this board in the last 2-3 weeks than I probably had in the last 7 years. It's been fun. Again, thank you for hearing my testimony this evening related to contract procedures at the Board of Education. My name is Darnell Golson, I'm a member of the Board of Ed. My main responsibility as a member of the board is to provide the highest quality educational experience to the children of the Haven. The secondary goal, just as important, is to ensure that the taxpayer as well as grant dollars are expended in the most efficient manner towards that purpose. Though we as a city have much to discuss related to that main responsibility, education, and some of the issues that have arisen over the last several months around learning, I am here today to address the secondary goal of efficient use of taxpayer dollars. As you know, the city of New Haven, along with the state and federal governments, are major funders of the New Haven public school system. New Haven is by far the largest funding source for the schools, currently at $190.6 million in what is known as the general fund. In fiscal year 2021, we also received another $206 million in other funding known as special funding, for a total of $397.1 billion. The New Haven Public School System is a separate body by state statute, but it conducts most of its large-scale contracting through the city's purchasing department and follows city ordinances. I have been a member of the board for nearly 7 years and have worked with other board members to upgrade a finance reporting process that was not nearly adequate for a $400 million organization. The Additionally, when I first joined BoE, the finance reports were non-existent, and written board members were more than six months behind. We did much to move financial reporting forward. We also reformed the contracting process so that the board had to approve contracts before they were awarded. It seems like common sense, but wasn't being done at the time. These may seem like simple changes, but they provided more transparency and oversight for public funding, public spending decisions. We know now we now know what our budget entails and where we spend our funds. Currently, 40% or 77 million of our general fund budget goes towards teacher salaries, while another 21% or 40 million is expended in contract. Because of the past administration's desire to attract out-of-town students to our district, we spend a whopping 27 million of that contracting on transportation, which is by far one of the largest transportation budgets in the state. And of course, that money is not spent in the classroom, it's spent on transport kids. This is just general fund spending, it does not include the special fund. Any waste or misuse of finance takes away from the already underfunded teacher and direct student funding opportunities. So we have made significant changes to our fiscal reporting oversight. There's much more that we can do. During my time at BoA, I have addressed a contracting and awarding process that seems to morph and change over time, mainly based on who's in charge. I've also seen policies that creatively discourage city ordinances as well as the Board of Education policies. I would like to discuss two of those policies with you today. I'm going to use the school transportation contract as an example to highlight the irregularities and BoE contracting procedures. Oversight and approvals. As you know, the charter of the city of Haven requires the approval of one for contracts in excess of 1 year. As a matter of fact, we just had tonight an example of one of those contracts. In fact, yes, it is apparent that the BoE is aware of this provision because we were here tonight on another issue. The BoE, the Board of Ed, has adopted a practice to avoid Board of Alderman's approval of contract by creatively changing the length of contracts. For transportation, instead of being a 5-year contract, they write the contract as a 1-year contract with 4 annual renewals, thereby avoiding Board of Alderman's approval. Yet the mayor, representing the city, not the superintendent of schools, is the signing authority of the contract. This eliminates BoA and voter oversight on one of the largest contracts at the BoE at over $27 million. Contract special conditions leads to lack of competition. The transportation contract has a special condition whereas a bidder must have a bus depot located in town boundaries. This is no small feat. It gives a distinct advantage to the incumbent provider. I spoke with several companies after the last bid where no one responded specifically because of this condition. And you'll hear from the bus company this evening on that issue. They are not allowed enough time to meet this condition. For years, we thought that there was an ordinance, we were told that there was an ordinance requiring this feature of the contract. Here it is not. This is actually just written into RFP. It was reasonable to believe that this clause will put in place to increase tax revenues in the city. But I've not seen a study to suggest that tax revenues received would outweigh costs saved with increased competition. And if that were the case, I am sure there are ways to compel the contractor to eventually house their operations in the haven while still getting the best price for transportation. Timetabling the bid process is adequate for competition. The last time the bid was put up for transportation, response time was for less than 60 days. With such a large and complicated bid and special conditions, it is almost impossible for competing companies to adequately respond. Lack of competition leads to increased costs. The last bid occurred because the current company decided to forego exercising their 4th renewal and instead forced us to go back out to bid. Here's stated justification. They asked for an increase in the contract for 3%, which was approximately $750,000, to 8%, over $2 million. He said no. Their logic for rejecting the renewal made sense to them. It was not a gamble at all, since the special conditions in the short bid timetable guaranteed that no one else but they would bid. And they were correct. The incumbent eventually received an increase greater than their request, along with another 5-year contract. So not only did they get more money for that last year, but they got another 5-year contract at higher cost. That was a double win for the contractor, a loss for the students and the taxpayers of the region. Additional adverse results. The contractor has another clause where if transportation cannot be provided, such as for snow day or pandemic, we are still obligated to pay the bus company. For nearly 2 years, NHP has paid over 85% of the contract, somewhere around $40 million, to this international-owned bus company, which did not transport one child to a school. $46 million. This is money which instead could have gone to teacher salaries, retention program, tutors, or any number of classroom-related activities to help offset children not being able to attend school. We have seen over the last several months what this impact of not attending school and not having those additional resources has done to student learning. For several years, the bus company was having issues with transportation, including canceling their late routes, etc. I'm sure many of you remember that. The contract calls for financial sanctions to the bus company, who were never able to enforce those sanctions because of the lack of competition. Nor were we able to modify the contract to bring in additional assistance to offset the problems. These are just a couple of several issues which negatively impact this city and school system. I will leave that for another day and forum to discuss a whole bunch of other issues around this. But this has been weighing on me for many years, and I've avoided coming to you, hoping that we would resolve it at the Board of Ed, but it just happens. I understand that another company may testify this evening, another bus company may testify this evening and perhaps provide additional clarity as to the process that they were up against. I do have one more short example of problems with the contract process to address. I will limit my testimony related to that contract because I understand there is a lawsuit or maybe a lawsuit filed. It's related to the cleaning contract. If you don't want me to bring it up at all, I won't. I won't talk about any specifics other than what's part of the public record. If that's okay, Mr. Chair.
So we've been advised by our Corporation Council to steer clear of this item, given that it is a subject of litigation. So I prefer that we not.
I think that these items are the issues I would bring up are part of the public record, but because I'm a member of the Board of Ed, I understand your concerns and I won't raise it. I know that contract and some other people are here to talk about it. I'm not quite sure how you're going to deal with that then. But I would certainly adhere to the chairman's wishes and not raise that. So I'll finalize this. Though I am not a transportation or cleaning expert, I do have some general suggestions for making the process more efficient and fair. I will give more specific suggestions for experts to make. Again, some of whom may be testifying. First, I would fix the ordinance to disallow the length of contract workaround that the board has, that the Board of Education has developed. Figure out how you fix it so that they can't be this creative in terms of having 5-year contracts that they call 1-year contracts. It doesn't help taxpayers, the city. Remove or modify the special conditions which limits competition, like the forced bus depot issue, or at least modify that so that there are some times for folks to be able to fill that. Codifying into law the number of participants on the selection committee to allow for robust and diverse participation. I've asked for the scoring sheets for some of these contracts from the selection committees, and still have not received them off the Board of Education. That's public information. Codifying, by the way, it was only, I won't talk about the contract. Codifying into law that the committee perform due diligence before the final selection of a bidder and include those results in the final grading process. It took me all of about 10 minutes to find some issues around one of our contractors on the internet, serious issues that the selection committee weren't aware of. And extend and codify into law the waiting time for bidders to respond to larger and more complex bids, especially those which call for large equipment purchases and outlays. I again thank you for the opportunity to testify before this committee. Respectfully submitted, Darnell Golson, and I will be giving you all a great copy of my testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. We're really grateful for taking the time to present us these comments. We're also very well included, right? That's also very helpful for us as well. Don't go into the chat. I see if members of the committee have questions. Let me just remind members of the committee that just as I did not permit Mr. Golson to talk about tonight as a subject clause, I'm not going to let committee members ask about it. So the cleaning contract in particular is a subject lawsuit. We're not going to discuss it. I'm not going to make any questions that come here. So, but Mr. Golson has shared with us quite a bit of experience from his perspective and recommendation that it's certainly worth asking about. And I will open to you to colleagues who would like to ask questions. Let's go Winter and we'll address.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Golson, for your testimony. Can you provide specific examples of this contract where the Board of Education is skirting the multi-year approval by the Board of Alder's requirement?
Besides transportation?
Yeah, there's.
We probably have, and I don't have the agenda in front of me at this point, but on our agenda, we probably have 5 or 6 contracts every board meeting with this issue.
Okay.
And I certainly would be more than willing to provide to the committee, so to the staff, to the committee.
No, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Alder. Next we have Alder Festa, followed by Alder.
Mr. Chair, I hope I word this correctly where it doesn't interfere and conflict with that cleaning contract. I'm just curious as to what is the policy procedure for someone to apply for whatever generic contract is out there. So what is the policy? What is the procedure? What do we look for? It's a general statement for all contracts that are. Okay.
Well, we follow for mainly the process that's managed by the purchasing department here at the city of New Haven. For some smaller contracts, we do have some internal procedures in place for how to do personal services contracts, contracts. For instance, less than $20,000, the superintendent is authorized to those contracts without board approval. But there are procedures and policies in place to manage that contract process. And in fact, we just overhauled that this past year through Dr. Joyner's committee to overhaul our policies and procedures. Again, I don't have it into memory, but I would certainly be happy to forward to the committee actual copies of our policies. But for the most part, especially for these larger contracts, we go through purchasing department and use the city rule, existing city rules.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, you can get those policies that you and in conjunction to our city policy.
yes, we will definitely take up his, Mr. Olson's offers as policies. As to the city's rules, we'll talk about that further.
And Mr. Olson, is there usually an RFP, I mentioned it earlier, the RFP process, is that something that the board that does use for contractors?
Absolutely, and I was surprised to hear this evening about that contract that was here earlier, that did not go through that process. If the answer was it was sole source, then I could understand that, but that wasn't the answer. The answer was it was easier for us to do it this way than it is to do another way. That's a little concerning for me as a board member and as a taxpayer.
Well, I'm glad you were here to hear it, because you served as an elected member of the Board of Ed, and you, I guess, can bring the message back, but those are put in place so we can look at what's out there, reputation, as well as pricing. It's not just based on quantity, it's based on quality as well, so I appreciate that. And then just regarding transportation, because it's on here, do we get reimbursed for anything that bus companies fail on? I mean, just this year, at the beginning of the year, we had many scheduling concerns where parents were waiting at bus stops, bus never came. Now they're responsible for trying to get this child, like grandparent, trying to get this child to school. And I know a few people use Uber actually to get their child to, you know, how do we fix these problems? And, you know, also sports transportation. After our athletes go to away games, and there were many instances where our athletes were unable to get to a destination because they did not have a car. I mean, generally the parents, I'm sure Chair Marchand, who is good into the city sports, knows that as parents of athletes, we make every effort to transport whatever child we can and ensure our child fits in our cars. But this is a concern because, you know, athletes look forward to these things for many reasons. One, there could be scouting agents out there looking for them. There's scholarships that might be available to them, and it's also mental health. So with that, you know, how does that work, and how do we get reimbursed for these?
Well, first of all, thank you for that question. I have to say that I'm a little embarrassed because it's the first time I heard that we weren't providing buses, or buses weren't showing up for some of our athletic events. It's embarrassing to hear that here at this meeting as a member of the Board of Education. The short answer to your question is no, we don't get reimbursed. Now, we're supposed to be able to sanction them when they're late, when the buses don't show up and so on, but we've never done it. And the excuse that we've been given is, well, you know, they're only gaining time. It's like, what are we going to do? If we don't go with them, who are we going to go with? And the problem is that they're only gaining time because we developed a process that allowed them to be the only gaining time. There's a whole lot of bus companies out there that would love to compete for our business. And I'm sure that if we had the option to be able to maybe bring on other bus companies when these issues were happening, you know, say, okay, look, this is what we're going to do. We're going to subcontract with a bus company to provide transportation just for sports events and so on. I mean, somebody would get the job done, but we're not allowed to do that now in the current system. So I will go back and certainly raise that issue with the administration of the Board of Education to find, because this is the first time I've heard of that. And I have to say again, I'm extremely embarrassed to have to come to the Board of Alders to hear this issue raised. And I hope that some of the alders there, when they do get some of those issues or come across some of those issues, would reach out to some of the board members. I'm an elected member, Dr. Joy is an elected member. I think all of the board members would be more than willing. I hope that most of the board members would be more than willing to talk to Board of Alder members, our major funders. So please reach out to us if you hear these issues.
Yeah, and my main concern was the students not getting to the college.
Of course.
That most important.
Of course. Of course, and we haven't heard the issues this year, and I was surprised by it, because normally, you know, at the beginning of the year, we hear a lot of different stuff. We haven't heard many this year, the superintendent actually commented at tonight's meeting that for the most part, busing went well, and because I haven't heard complaints from the parents, I just had to assume that was correct.
Well, I guess we got the problem, I apologize for failing to contact the board of ed, but the concern was also that students were not getting to class, but the parents were also contacting the bus company. And one person called 20 times with no answer,
That's always a nightmare trying to get over it.
and then someone answered, and of course, they didn't have the answers for them, so just take that back to that, someone needs to answer as well.
Yes, ma'am.
To comment.
Thank
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you all for this.
Thank you, Alderman Fassa. Next up, Q is Alderman Robert Myers, and City Clerk, Alderman Bush, ask question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question, is you said you referenced in your testimony, tonight that for 2 years, I believe it was, the bus company didn't transfer anyone, due to COVID, but we still paid them. So I guess my question is, you said it's a 1-year contract.
Ma'am, it's a 5-year, it's a 1-year contract with 4 annual renewals.
Okay, so that's all I'm getting there. So are the renewals automatic, is my first question.
Well, they're not automatic, I mean, they have to be agreed upon by both parties.
So for the year where, we paid and no or transport, was that under the renewable year or was it in the first year of contract?
It was renewable years. The contract was, I believe, in 2018 or 2019 is when the bus company decided not to take the 4th renewal. So those years were they were renewable years.
And then my other question, you mentioned that throughout the, you mentioned that you found information about one of the companies that have a contract with the Board of Ed within 10 minutes on the internet that other people didn't know about, couldn't find, or didn't understand. Is there anything in the actual RFP or in the contract or something that asks specific questions to how one company work with unions, since we have a number of different unions here in the city and things of that nature? Is that, are those questions asked?
I do not believe they are. They do ask for references. And like any other reference, I mean, just like for a job, I mean, they ask for a reference, you gotta give them, let's say, great things about you. And we have to do our own due diligence, decide what they give us. And we did not do that in the contract. How we got this.
So I'm asking for a specific, because I do agree that if you ask for references, somebody is gonna have a reference that is flowing, right? But it is certain ways you can phrase questions where you can pull that information out from the information that they actually give you that we're asking and requiring. And then my last question, I will yield and come back if I can, Mr. Chair. No, I'm gonna ask my last question, but I'm gonna get back to you. Hold on.
Yes.
Okay. So my last question is, normally with the contracts that go out, you said the RFP, I believe, was only out for 60 days, right, with the contract. What is the normal practice since you've been on the Board of Education that you normally see the contract stay out?
See, I'm glad you raised that issue, Alder Walker Myers. It's an issue that we come across all the time, and it's mainly our fault, right? I mean, I've asked time and time again for the administration to 6 months out start the bidding process. That gives not only enough time for bidders to respond, but it also gives them time for transition. And we keep waiting, for some reason, we keep waiting for 30 or 60 days before the contract is due, is expired before we actually put it out to bid. And oftentimes, we get contracts, when I first joined the board, we were getting contracts that were already in effect to approve, like 3 months late. I mean, they were already in effect 3 months prior to for them asking for our approval. It took us nearly a year and a half to clean up that system. So normally, you really should have, at least, you should really start the bid process at least 6 months in advance. Maybe in this bus contract, you should probably do it even further on. Yeah, like a year. But for some reason, we won't get there for some reason. I can't, you can ask the administration, why not? I don't know. I mean, I hear that, this last contract that went out for a short time, we were told is because our person who was responsible for managing that was new, and a couple of different excuses around, well, we were new to it, we didn't quite understand it, this happened, somebody got sick, whatever. But it still doesn't best serve the school system, our students, or the taxpayers to wait till the last minute to put these things on the bid.
So what I'm hearing is, there is no set time that it has to be out.
No.
Okay, thank you. I will use now.
Thank you, all the I see all the boards next on the queue. And I'll look around and see if other colleagues wish to ask questions. All roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question kind of piggybacks on statements that was made from our president. The policy, because I'm always about, if it ain't written, I would be easier. If it ain't written, it didn't happen. Therefore, what is the policy? Because there has to be policies surrounding the bid process. There has to be something written that says a year before the contract is expiring, it needs to come back to whatever. Is there any policy?
There is not a policy related to the timing of putting out the bid. I raised the issue a couple of times. The way it was addressed was all of these contracts are kind of different. You shouldn't try to have one size fits all. Unfortunately, by not having the one size fits all, you have all kinds of different sizes that don't fit anything, quite frankly. And putting out a bus contract in 60 days certainly is not adequate. But there is no written policy at the Board of Education on how much time it should be. I don't believe there's a written policy with the purchasing department here in the Haven, and there are people here that can answer that question for the city. I don't work in the department, but I don't believe there is. If there is, it's certainly not followed.
So when it comes to rules and regulations and all that, like the board follows, we are, one of our roles is to institute policy. Are you on that committee? Because there should be a committee for some type of something that speaks to the policy. For example, I'm on the library, right? The board. And we're constantly looking at the policy. Some policies we just recently pulled from the 70s that doesn't work in the 2000s, right? So we need to reevaluate. So is there a system in place with the Board of Ed that this is constantly looking at policies to see, just like how we do not redistricting, charter revision, just like we do charter revision once every 10 years? Is there a committee that does that or no? Because that's probably where you need to start, or someone within that system needs to start to say, okay, we're going to look at policies. That's all we do, is look at policy.
Thank you for that question, Alder Morrison. Absolutely, we have a policy committee. As a matter of fact, when I was chairman of the board, we revamped our policies, totally revamped our policies. We only got a contractor, and our policies at that time had been written in 97. So we haven't been updated for a long time. I even used some of the Board of Alders policies as templates for the new policies that we wrote. But, yes, we can address some of this at the Board of Education. There seems to be, we want this to do that, but even more so, you have policies in place to protect the taxpayers that are not being followed. Like the first example I gave you, you have a policy where contracts that are more than 1 year have to come before this board. And people get creative in skirting around those policies. So as soon as you write a policy, somebody finds a way to get around it. And then you have to take another 2 or 3 years to figure out how to write the new policy that is then skirted.
That's how lawyers make them.
But my biggest concern, besides some of the other stuff that I raised was this whole way of getting around additional oversight. And you guys on the Board of Alders are the major funders for the Board of Education. And we certainly don't want you looking at our $20,000 contracts and our $50,000 contracts or our next 1 year contract. But if we have a $27 million contract, we need to have extra eyes on that. So we need to be able to have the board look at that. And taxpayers be able to look at that, because the taxpayers have no real input at the Board of Education. I mean, we have public comment, but they don't get to testify at committee hearings. They don't get to address these issues at our committees like you do here at the Board of Alders. So I think it's important for you guys to figure out how to enforce your policy so that we're following your policy.
Well, one recommendation, everybody's contract within a year before it expires, a year and a day, needs to be looked at. That I mean, it's as simple as that, or probably is as hard, because whatever is supposed to be simple becomes a problem. But to me, anything that's about to expire, you have to at least start a year before, because life gets in the way. So I don't know who here needs to hear that or know that.
They'll hear all of those. Thank you very much. I'll make sure to bring that issue back. The issues that we could address, I'm certainly going to bring that to the board. I don't have much of a voice on the board right now. I have to come up in a second to my motion. So, but I want to address the issues anyhow. But I also think that the Board of Alders has to be responsible for its ordinances that are not being followed at the board.
We don't know. We can't do it. You guys, the public, there are eyes and ears. We down here trying to make laws and trying to do stuff. But if people like you don't come to the table to say X, Y, and Z is going on, we won't know. So we can't do our job unless everybody else is doing their job.
I understand that, that's why I'm here.
Thank you, I appreciate you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you all. Questions from committee members? I know that Alders, Walter Myers, and Beth would like to ask questions again. We'll have an opportunity, but I'm looking for both members of the committee who have not yet asked questions. We will have the opportunity first. Okay, please.
When you said you were chairman one time, when you were chairman, how long before the control saw you guys were out there?
When I first became chair, we didn't even see the contracts. We saw the contracts after they were already in play, service. So we were just approving the contracts that we were already working on. So it took about a year and a half to fix that. We also entirely rewrote our policies, our bylaws, our ethics policies, so on. So it took us about another year to get that done. After that second year, I wasn't chair anymore. So issues that I tried to press this issue of putting contracts out sooner and couldn't get any traction.
Thank you, Alder Santiago. Okay, we will now go to Alder Walker Myers, followed by Alder Festival.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So. Do you have a clause in any of the board of ed contracts that have like a transition clause, right? So if you use an old company, you're no longer using them, is it a transition clause so that a new company can get kind of like up to date, up to speed, or anything like that?
No, there is not, but I can tell you, oftentimes, several times, including, that contract we won't talk about, we had to approve, additional contract, for transition. So there is not a transition clause in the contracts per se, but we oftentimes either approve an amendment or additional contract to allow for transition. But that costs us more money because now we have two contractors doing the same job for several months.
And then my last question, so you mentioned how with the board of ed contract, people figure out how to go around the process that we have in place. Is it any more, I don't know if this should be the right word, but is it any other mechanism being used at the board of ed to go around the processes that set things up on the board that deals directly with just board of ed?
But, you know, the surprising thing is that you don't have a lot of mechanisms in place for us to have to go around, which is a good thing. But I'm sorry. There is not much that the Board of Alders asks from the Board of Ed. You ask us to follow your RFP processes through your purchasing department, and you ask us to bring you multi-year contracts. Those are two of the main items. And though we seem to follow RFP process, I'm not quite sure how closely we follow it, because I'm sure Mr. Fumiati would love to get more than 30 or 60 days notice to contractors when contracts expire. Certainly, this thing about the 1 year, 4 year renewals is probably unique. I shouldn't say it's unique because I'm not sure what other departments do, but it's certainly something that that should have caught the eye a long time ago. And I was surprised, I'm still surprised that we get away with it, and that the Board of Alders hasn't caught wind of it, quite frankly. And it's just frustrating for me to see it year after year after year, and to see the negative effects that it has on our school system financially. So those are the two things that I know about for sure.
So anything that involves the Board of Alders, we can take a look at that on our own to figure that stuff out, and I believe we will. But I get it. That's it, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Use older water lines and older past that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as you mentioned, the Board of Ed follows the RFQ policy of the city. But do you know, and this is general, if we prioritize, local municipality and or state applications, for example, police department, fire department, you get extra points if you live in the city. We're always pushing to hire in the city. Do you know if that is a question on our application? If you don't know that, that's what we can find out on our.
I don't know if it's a question. I do know in the RFP it is mentioned. I also know that in at least one situation, at least one instance, the selection committee members were not aware of the ordinance and what it said around local selection. I wasn't even aware of it until that contract. And I went back and read the ordinance. It was really clear. And it's only about 3 or 4 paragraphs of information. It's real specific and clear about local preferences. And it wasn't followed. Well, I won't say it wasn't followed. I can tell you when I asked members of the selection committee if they were aware of it, they were not.
Okay, and that's good to know, because it's important that we look at that very closely, because we want to push for local hires. And, you know, the Board of Ed doesn't have a problem coming to us for additional funding when it comes to budget season every year. So I find some of the things you've mentioned, a little disrespectful towards us and finding loopholes with the whole bus transportation thing. And something for us to consider, I guess, during the next budget season, when the request comes in for additional funding from the taxpayers of the city. And you, as an elected official, to not have a voice is disrespectful to your constituents.
Thank you, Alder Fester. I do not want to set up an adversarial relationship between the Board of Education and the Board of Alders. And I certainly would support the Board of Education continuing to come before this body and asking for adequate funding for our students. I don't think we do that every year, quite frankly. I don't think we ask for enough. I know we're not going to get much more because the city is in the streets that we are. But I certainly don't want what some people may be doing to affect how our children are funded and how our children are funded and how that affects their educational prospects.
And you know what, that is absolutely correct, and that is something we consider every year. It's just we will be taking a closer look at how this money is being spent to make sure that it is going to our children. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you all the rest of. I'm looking around, I do not see colleagues with further questions. We're going to move on the portion of this item. And I'll have to say for deliberations.
I discuss.
You are.
I don't know what I'm doing to this thing, but I have to realize that. Is that what it is? Thank you.
So now we will take so he was you should respond to that. Talk to him about changes.
And then once they have identified, I will ask if there are others who identify. And we'll call it forward. And so, figure before I leave you remember, we address the rest.
The bid. It's a concept that doesn't look big.
Thank you so much. And
Of course, $30,000 a week around is because of the bidding.
I just want to remember, members of the public,
This is what we need to change. Always was.
and if you talk
For there to
about
be
the
a
contract that has law because of litigation,
I think it was supposed
that
to
doesn't prevent someone who's potentially involved in litigation to come and talk more properly about policy, but we're not going to entertain discussion of that particular
if
situation.
it does not, or it was wrong, then according to the this is what we put in back in one to deal with your problem. It's after the hearing includes its initial term. That's how we know it's multiple.
Need a chance.
We already dealt with this is how we came around it. Bid, right? But it's poor. It should be poor. That's what this is fixed.
Bid on snow contracts. So that people, they would not be doing contracts for snow removal that don't come up for months. And what I'm trying to tell you is that they pick and choose and do whatever they want to do. So they renew the snow removal contract in April, saying that, oh, we figured it was a good price that we would just renew. Now, at one time I did East Rock School. And then they tell you that in order for you to get a zone, you gotta have a certain amount of vehicles and this and that. Okay, well, we got it. So we save our money up,
we get the equipment so we can bid, and then we go to bid, they keep moving the bar. And when you talk about the 1 year with the 4-year option, okay, how do we get any work when you give somebody a 4-year option on snow removal? So when you look at the city of New I'm from New Orleans, everybody was on the job. These kids graduate from the schools. You can walk right to Hill House, you can walk to these other schools to do snow removal. If you go out there and look, who's doing snow removal, it's not even the community. So a lot of times I always think you guys involved on jobs that the board of officers. And you guys got a lot of jobs in the pipeline, I appreciate that. But what I'm talking about is they got a lot of money over there too. And they've been doing the 3-car Monty with us forever. I'm glad I came up here and brought some stuff from you. He talking about the bus. I'm telling you right now, Steve, snow removal contracts, and not trying to be funny. Some people have snow removal contracts 10 minutes. And now they family member. So I'm sitting there saying to myself, you telling me that I got equipment, I got this. So how do somebody come in home, a woman that never had a snow removal business, come in all of a sudden now, you doing snow removal contracts? Like, how do you buy this equipment? What are your references at? Like, how did that happen? But this is what's happening with the Board of Education. They moved a lot of money, moved a lot of contracts, and they didn't do what they wanted to. And my concern is the youth is coming up my community. Me, I feel like my job is to create opportunities for them to be bosses. But how could you be a boss who can't even work? So I'm asking y'all, I'm good. I figured out how to get it done again. I'm trying to help the other kids not. It's not gonna count. It's not gonna It's here and trying to figure out how to save. We got a lot of building going on. These projects, don't need to pay rent. And I'm telling you right now, Paul Bass, I remember he did the graph on the work, and minorities, the only minority they had up here was Shakir. There was nobody else that made no money out of all that money. So ask them, who the minorities got the contract for the city. I know the contractors. We ain't got nothing. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you so much. Former alders, I think I'll lose the word here next. You, and then I will ask others from the public wish to And once again, name and address.
Yes, Shelby, producer bar 670 06511. So thank you all again for allowing me to speak out and read the safety and all.
You heard my comments before about what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Yes, I did.
Yes, 8 years ago.
If all the people just give me the overflow. Oh, yeah. Oh. Again, thank you for allowing me to speak. This is Echo Urban Finance public testimony to the New Haven Board of Alder's Finance Committee, September 12th, 2022. Dear members of the New Haven Board of Alder's Finance Committee, Echo Urban Pioneers, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity in holding this public hearing on the request to the Board of Alders to review and investigate the policies and procedures related to the awarding contracts at the Board of Education. For the past 8 years, EUP is extremely proud to have employed hundreds of residents, primarily from underserved communities, and to have provided clean schools with zero shutdowns during shutdowns due to cleaning over the last tumultuous years, to include cleaning through the pandemic. A snapshot of our company's, of our contract history with the New Haven Board of Ed is as follows. September 2014, Echo Urban Pioneers started out cleaning 3 schools, New Haven Academy, Eastham, and Reggie. June 2016, we entered into an agreement with DPM in a joint bid process and successfully won the custodian contract where we cleaned 12 schools, thus fulfilling the NBE and local company requirement. June 2018, we bid on and successfully won the custodial contract to clean then all 52 schools. Because EUP is a certified NBE, which is minority business entity, and it's certified to the state. So it's sort of be clear, we're certified to the state. There's a process you have to go through to prove that you're a Black company. That's birth certificate, marriage certificate, your license, everything but a blood sample. But nevertheless, we fulfilled the NBE and the local award, fulfilling the minority and small business requirement in June 2018. Then again in June 2018, we created an association with Giordano Construction and Echo Urban Pioneers, where we jointly bid to build Strong School, later renamed Obama Academy, on the SCSU campus. EUP operated as a construction manager, workshop development for MBE, WBE, which is Women Business Entity, HBE, which is Hispanic Business Entity, and workforce for the New Haven residents. July 2019, EUP contract renewal was approved to continue custodial contract, the same for 2020, the same for 2021, and then most recently in June 2022, we were asked to extend the current contract that was expiring, which was part of the discussion that was said here earlier about transition. We were asked to work 2 additional months on the extension of that contract. As a small and ambitious, locally owned and Black-owned company, Echo Urban Pioneers was able to meet the hiring demands of the New Haven community, consistently maintain and meet our payroll demands, maintain good standing with SEIU 32BJ, and perform our contract with quality service. As a New Haven-based company, we take the community and taxpayers' money seriously, and that's why when Mr. Pinto, the former New Haven Board of Ed CFO, approached us about taking a $500,000 hit during COVID, even though we kept our EUP 32BJ workers employed and paid out of our expense, we complied. EUP saved the Board of Ed $500,000. Then in 2020, when Mr. Pinto, the former COO, asked us to negotiate or renegotiate our contract that year and give back 1.5%, half of the contract increase, EUP agreed. During COVID, when the school needed to be reopened on the request of the New Haven Board of Ed, we hired and trained staff for 25 positions. For nearly 7 months, we carried a payroll of approximately 210 workers with union fees in the amount of roughly $1.2 million. When I mean we carried it, I mean that we carry that money out of our company pocket without payment from the Board of Ed. The amount also included last payment for regular contract because there was no purchase order number. We did not stop any extra hours because we weren't paid, because we see our relationship with the Board of Ed, the students and our staff and the New Haven community as a valued partnership in providing safe schools for the New Haven students, teachers, and staff. The City of New Haven and the New Haven Board of Ed share a unique relationship with awarding power and managing controls over these contracts. I asked the New Haven Board of Aldermen to intervene in this process to ensure that the will of the people and the needs of the New Haven voters are being met. In addition, to also verify that the policies and ordinances that have been ratified by law to protect minority and New Haven-based businesses are adhered to. If we are for promoting and developing New Haven minority-owned businesses and New Haven-based businesses, then surely the recent and current actions of the New Haven Board of Ed, to include the mayor, are in direct opposition to addressing New Haven's historic battle with economic inequality, systematic racism, and generational wealth. Respectfully submitted, Shafiq Yusuf, owner of Untitled Chapter. That will conclude my testimony. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your testimony. I gave you the opportunity to read this into the record. We received that. I do think it's in regards to that. Are not going to discuss or consider proceedings, so we are not going to ask questions. So instead, we'll thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all.
Okay, so those are the two individuals who signed up to testify this evening. On the side, are there others who wish to testify on the side? Please come forward. Yes, correct.
Dr. Boris September, 47 Stevenson Road, New Haven, Connecticut 06515. Mr. Chairman, I thought long and hard about how to phrase, how to articulate what I wanted to say this evening. It is like the narrative of the fox and the chickens. The fox is in charge of the chickens over at the Board of Education. Whatever the fox says, that's what the chickens does. There has to be some kind of oversight as the fox continues to lead the chickens down the wrong pathway. Blacks are suffering in this city. I speak on behalf of a number of my own parishioners who are unable to even apply or get a contract over at the Board of Education. If you would look at the status and the contracts at the Board of Education today, millions and millions of dollars, there are no blacks who are in line to even get a snow removal contract, let alone a janitorial contract. Look at the Board of Education today, you probably have read about a number of things that I have written about that our kids are in trouble. Not able to read, not able to do math. 5 meetings have taken place with the Board of Education, and nobody has said anything about putting money into the reading process of the Board of Education. But they continue to hire administrators, continue to hire outside contractors who do not even live in New Haven, who come in town by the morning and leave by the evening with no real sense of seriousness about the people of this city. You have, Mr. Chairman, the charter revision coming up. I believe and I think that the Board of Education should be a part of the charter revision on how they do business.
Maybe we don't need a board of education membership sitting on the board. That will take all of the politics from the fox, and there will be no chickens to follow the fox. It was the fox, Mr. Chairman, who made the motion to get rid of a black company. And one of his chickens seconded the motion. I would hope that this board, here that is present, those that are not present, would look deeply into how business is ran over at the Board of Education. Well, thank you for your time tonight. And thank this board.
Would any other member of the public wish to testify on this item? Please come forward. If you are connected or a part of a group, you may all come together if you wish. In the interest of time. Please take a seat, and when you have, would yourselves, we're all settled, you'll just pass the mic down, give us your names and addresses for the record, and then start with you.
My name is Art Jackson, and my address is 75 Commercial Street, Huntington, New York. I'm not from David. I am a past president of B Transport Stores Company. Bridgeport. We'll do the names first, and then we'll do this. And before you finish introducing yourselves, what I'm going to have you gentlemen do to assist our staff is when you have a few moments from the staff report, just start your names and addresses. So I'll take us with the record. Hello, my name is Chris Wilford. I'm 1436 West Jackson Street, Iowa. With me, Sister Colleen Beaton. Ruth, near the one by Andrew Eichel, 65 Eric Circle, Bridgeport. Also, we can. Who would like to use them? Long list of stuff that I heard tonight, but I can tell you that I guess the best way to testify is to tell you as a contractor what would interest me, what would intrigue me, what would attract me to this district in order to your district, in order for me to take the contract. The last time that John came out that we were interested, it as Mr. Colson had testified, it was less than 60 days before transportation was to start. And we had spoken after that, he asked me why. And you just can't put together that type of package in such a short period of time. And I mean, the first thing that, and to your point, I think you said that, I think it was you said that, that you think that there should be a rule that contracts should be let out a year ahead of time. And in my opinion, I think 6 months is adequate, maybe not for, I don't know how many bus drivers now, let's say 600. But if you split the job into multiple zones, so it's 200, 200, 200, or 150, 150, 150, or SPED, special ed, and general ed, split it in certain ways, it gives the ability for a contractor like myself to come in and compete. It, so that's one thing. Another way, in Bridgeport, whether it's a 1 year or 5 year contract, the board, the city has to approve it. So that's the work that we're doing and just, the point that I was saying. So if it were split, it's $27 million of transportation. If it were split into smaller segments, you would have better coverage. If one of your contractors were to fail, the other contractors would, fill in the gaps. They would love to fill in the gaps. That's not to say that the board is not, it can be put out in, let's say, 4 separate parcels for facilities. But it's still up to the discretion of the board, for BoA or BoA to, for the best interest of the board, you still can decide to take one contractor. But it does give you more of an opportunity to, it gives you an opportunity to see what's on the menu rather than just one company. So I'll pass the mic over to Chris for a little bit, and then I'll come up with some other ideas. But really, so you understand from our standpoint, we're a company. I was a company of 2,000 school buses. I joined Beacon, which structurally Chris works for the parent company. We're a company of now 15 companies instead of just one. So we, maybe this is a little bit of a commercial here, but we do have the ability to come in and service a New Haven if New Haven were interested in hearing what, our prices, what we have to say, what we have to offer. And I'll pass on to you.
Thank you for your comments, sir, and give you a chance to speak in just a moment. I just want to state for your information that, of course, this is not the meeting where we decide who's going to do busing for the future. Well, our purview is, of course, to think about processes that provide appropriate oversight to organize our city government so that the operations are taken care of efficiently, in case it do, and the city gets the best value for its dollars. So that's what we're interested in. That's the stewardship that we have as primary. But of course, we're interested in the perspective of potential contractors who have legal processes to maybe work in other places that are on. So thank you very much.
So there's a few things with the last RFP process that really created us with the data with the times we talked about and the department we talked about. So those two much. One thing to hopefully brought up in there, I think it's really to be interested in still removal is that there was a no objective like scoring sheet or rubric for the last contract. And so that gives transparency to the bidders to know also gives the board a really strong objective measure to vote against or to grade against rather than just what they feel like other than that, there's a lot of experience especially larger school districts and ones that are complicated transportation systems for the RFP process. Will hire a third-party transportation consultant who will help them in assisting through the RFP process separate. They're not providing a solely RFPs and whether it's transportation specific or across the board. It usually helps for something that's $27 million a year. It's super complicated and it has all this special information. And so having someone, if there's not an partner to be running the RFP process, especially for the Department of Transportation, having a third-party consultant who's not part of or anything like that, permitted in the system, so that they can. It also helps that whoever the administrator is running the RFP process on the school district side, then less is taken off, less is they have to do less and more is put into the consultant in that sense that
They don't have to be answering all of the specific questions that the contractors from that, the RFP. During the specific RFP process. If you mitigate well, seeing the districts with bigger budget, who have to do one there and trying to.
Okay. And I heard the point of real estate, because it's certainly hard for one contractor to operate, impossible less than 60 days. And if Marco and consultants, we could, we could handle 150, 200. You'll get, if you put a 600 plus contract, I don't really know the size of this thing, I'm sorry, I'm not political. 350, okay. If you put a 350 vehicle contract out to bid, certainly the shorter the period of time, the less contractors you have. If you put out a 350, you're going to have on hand, one or two or three people that may be interested if there's enough time. We would be one of them because we are a fleet of 9,000 vehicles now. Now that I'm really a beacon. But if you put it out as 150 or split it as SPED and general ed, you might get real competition there. You might get a real, and you have a pick, and you need a metrics, a scoring sheet. You need to do due diligence and investigate what districts are happy with the transportation company that you're looking at, and what districts are unhappy. And it's a process, it really is, and I think Chris is correct. If it were me sitting on the other side of the table, I would hire a consultant that does nothing but this, and they bring the whole package, okay? And they're experienced, they've been through it before. They know what they're doing, they're gonna cost some money, but they're gonna save something.
Just to, Chairman, members of the board, there's just a comment on Morrison's question. What we found best as far as when it comes to this, the transportation contract is a huge expense to a district or to the city. The contract is at least 8 months ahead of time. That allows each individual or each bidder enough time to properly go through the contract. There's things like finding real estate that was mentioned before. There's things like as far as purchasing vehicles. There's also upkeep, hiring employees. Also, the startups, the transition period, smoothly taken over. So we found that as the best policy or best time frame for something like this to work. Translation previously, we were definitely interested in it on 2 occasions since we've been into the state. But we found some barriers to us being able to obtain the contract, so we were unsuccessful. Not only because of the price, but because of other barriers that were found. I would have to say would be invisible barriers. I would say is the best word.
Well, any questions?
John, this appeared to have stopped. Should I just push the record again to get it going?
Yeah.
I don't want to overwrite anything.
I will overwrite.
It's recording, yeah.
So do y'all mind saying all that over again?
We won't rely on broadcasting on YouTube. So, thank you for that feedback. It is valuable for us to get from bidders who would be interested in going through the process. Questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you for your time, and we appreciate the patience that you showed. Coming all the way from Illinois And, you give us feedback. Indeed.
By the way, if you give the contract with land, you don't need it. And you control carriers. If you happen to have the land.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're even got a lot of land. People get it by the river Thank you. Thank you very much.
I feel like I'm for free.
All right, committee members, let's keep this going and bring this home. Any further? I gotta raise their hands, please. Everybody, anybody from the public wishing to testify on this side? Is there any further public testimony on item number 6? And for the third time, is there any further public testimony on the side? Seeing none, I will make a motion to close public portion.
Mr. Chair, I move a motion to close public portion.
Second.
The motion to close public portion has been made and seconded. Any discussion of the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. The motion carries. We close the public portion of this.
Mr. Chair, I move item 1.
The motion has been made and seconded. Discussion on item 1, the multi-year lease agreement with prison office solutions. Over Festa, Chair on Q. Go ahead, Over Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It looks like we're, as well as increasing the monthly cost for these items and current one.
Thank you, Over Festa. Alderman.
I would just say with regard to the cost per copy, I think like it would be good for the city to continue to pursue its goal of a paperless operation. And for us to keep in mind that this is public information, right? That belongs to the public. In an ideal world, they wouldn't have to pay for it, and we wouldn't have to make money. Some of this information is the city's information, which the city's generates, like the taxing. And so to the extent that we can streamline our process internally, that information is digitized on some level. And in an ideal world, we'd be able to deliver that digitally without any cost or copies. So I was encouraged that Director Gormany said he would look into that on the city side. Hopefully we could work with the Water Pollution Control Authority on their needs as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alderman. Your question for Alderman, are in favor of that? Your points are well taken, sir, so I don't detract them, but we're deliberations of the months, so we should say we're in favor.
Yeah, I think I am in favor, given that we have to get this information public somehow. But I have serious reservations about having folks pay for paper copies of city documents. You know, it's 2022, we should be able to figure out how to deliver this information. Particularly the information that's under the city's control in a digital format without cost. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Just a reminder to colleagues, when we're deliberating items, it's according to Robert's rules and our procedures, it's important to actually see if you're in favor of it or not. You can also add other comments, of course. Further comments, Alder Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair Martin. I'm in favor of the item. I'm in support of the item. The public needs this information, and so far it's only available through big books that they can make copies of. So since that is the process available, let's, keep it going and support the item so that, the public can be served. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alder Hamilton. Further discussion on item number 1. Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Item passes, we'll give a favorable recommendation to the full board. Alders.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Wright.
I'll move item number 2.
Item 2 has been moved and seconded, ordinance amendment, making changes to Article 18 and designating certain positions as key positions. Discussion of the motion. I see Alder Festa and Alder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in favor of this, and I understand why this is being done in order to be more competitive and hire the best that's out there. I do wish to have additional information on how we as a municipality proceed regarding how an employee invest their money, whether it be a pension fund, a 401k, a Roth, et cetera, particularly for new employees. So obviously, there's already those that are grandfathered in for pensions and are already invested in the current system that we have. But moving forward with new employees, it would be, I think, to everyone's benefit to get additional information on how we wish to proceed. That makes sense where we, as taxpayers and residents, can afford to pay into our CERT and make sure that we're being responsible when people retire from the city. So as much as I do support this, it would be great to get additional information on future investments. Thank you.
Thank you all, Festa, and I'll take into consideration your remarks about future opportunities to learn more about retirement options. City employees. Alder Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in favor of this item for a number of reasons. I believe if someone starts in the bar unit and they work their way up to management, they should be able to have the pension and not have it where they're 20% less. So I'm in favor of that item for that reason. Because I think we should always be encouraging people to start entry level and go up as high as they can. And I feel like that is actually a barrier to someone making a decision to do so. That's the first thing. And the other thing that I appreciate about this item is whether the range is set at 169,000 or not, it has to come back before the Board of Alders to decide what the actual salary will be. So we're not losing our ability to say yes or no.
I'm going to interrupt you just for a moment to ask members of the public, please, to order discussions outside. We're in deliberations. And if you need to have a conversation, you should wait either until we adjourn or do it outside. Please continue, Alder Martin.
I guess I'm gonna stop right there because I totally lost my train of thought. So I apologize. I should have kept focusing here instead of turning my attention, but yeah, so the Board of Alders still have the ability to say yes or no to the salary. And just because the salary has a height of 169 does not actually mean we have to agree on that salary. So those are two of the reasons why I support this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Myers. And of course, if you remember what you're going to say, please get out into it.
Thank you.
I'll certainly forward the opportunity. Further comments from colleagues on item number 2? Alder Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair Martin. I am also in support of the item because I personally feel that if you work your way up the ladder and achieve a managerial status coming from the bargaining unit, your pension should reflect that. So that's the only fair and right thing to do. So I'm in support of the item. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Alder Hamilton. Further discussion on item number 2. I will get on cue to say briefly that I'm in favor of this item. I believe it makes sense to have a fair and equitable approach towards retirement options. And someone who works his or her way up the rank should not be penalized for that. I believe that the designation of these three positions as key employees seems like a reasonable strategy at the moment for making those crucial positions ones that will likely be filled by qualified people. But I wanted to sound a word of caution, or maybe not caution is not the right word, but we should pay attention to the fact that what we're seeing this evening is evidence of a broader phenomenon. Yeah. It is a strong labor market, which is good in many ways. But for employers, it means they have to pay them. And so it's not just an issue that comes up for key employees, but it's an issue that comes up in the contract negotiations. And it's an issue with which the city will have to grapple. The fact that I've seen enough evidence over the years to be pretty well convinced that the city does not pay at rates that are competitive, even in the lower paid public sector and in the private sector. We need people who work for the city to offer, to perform the functions that allow the city to operate. Those, it's going to have some significant budgetary consequences for the city. So this is going to be a big issue in the year ahead as we go. Budget season, and certainly as we look at how these ongoing contract negotiations unfold. But we just need to pay attention to it. And I think further that it may be time or time soon that this body address the broader issue of the confidential example manual. But considering the crucial need to hire a director of HR with the imminent departure of our incumbent, I think it makes sense to approve these moves now and make a commitment to the broader issues in due course. Further comments on item number 2? Alderman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also support and share what my colleague has said about this being a matter of equity and not penalizing someone for coming out through the bargaining unit. And yeah, in hearing the chair's comments on key employees, first, in reviewing it, I'm sort of surprised not to see the city controller on the list. And yeah, I guess I just wanted to flag that, given how long that position's been vacant. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alderman. Further questions, comments on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Mr. Chair, I move item number 3, please.
Second.
Item number 3 has been moved and seconded. This is the ordinance amendment in regards to the reclassification of certain positions. Comments, discussion on item number 3. Seeing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. The ayes have it, motion carries.
Mr. Chair, I move item number.
Before you make any motions, just at this point, Mr. Vice Chair, we heard a request from our Director of Management and Budget that the Board of Alders moves more quickly in item number 4. And the way that we have to do that is to request or discharge the item. And there, unless there's any objection to that, there's no motion to be made to this time. We will leave it in committee, and I will write a letter to the President of the Board of Alders asking the full board to discharge on the committee. The committee doesn't discharge an item, so we no vote is appropriate. Seeing Alderman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This, I guess, is more of a comment, necessarily an objection.
You have a comment on the procedure?
Yes.
What's your comment?
Well, things often take longer than we expect, and it would be good, particularly if we're expediting the item, to know exactly what the procedure around a month-to-month arrangement after the contract term is. Because it would be important to know what that looks like, what the parameters are, in order to avoid getting into another one-year contract.
I'll take that point into consideration. I think that's what we'll follow up with in city staff. Any further comments on the procedure? Seeing none, we will not take action on item 4 so that I may request that the board of aldermen start from this thing.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to remove item number 5.
Second.
Item 5 has been moved. This is seconded. This is the contract with School Mint, 3-year contract discussion. Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While I will support this item, I do want to know that it was disappointing to learn that an RFQ process was not taken with this contract, and I will estimate the service to everyone, including those that could apply for these contracts. So I just wanted to make note of that. Obviously, the lottery system for school choice, as it's called, is important in the city for parents as well as our students. So I will support it, but just wanted to make note of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Further discussion, Alder Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just speaking in opposition to this item for the same reason my colleague from the 10th Ward just mentioned. Given that they knew we weren't going to be able to use the existing software without a huge increase in cost, they said at the beginning, roughly the beginning of the year, means we have a full year here to find a new vendor. And it just doesn't seem reasonable to me that we wouldn't be able to issue an RFP, particularly given everything we've heard tonight about how short some of the RFP windows have been at this education. If it's a 2 or 3 month RFP window, it seems perfectly reasonable that you'd have enough time to follow that process. And yeah, it doesn't seem fair not to do it, even if you have a company within this niche market that's buying up other competitors. That does indicate that there are competitors, and it doesn't seem like there's been anything lost by seeking other bids. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Winter. Further comments on this item? I will just say that my judgment is that we should approve it, mainly because I think the additional steps of asking the company to support an obsolete system is probably not the best use of city resources. Although I would respect the vote of the colleague who would feel that that additional expense is worth incurring in defense of a more deliberative and mindful approach to deciding on contracts. Further comments from colleagues? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it, motion carried. And I believe a motion to read and file number 6 would be appropriate.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, make a motion that we read and file item number 6.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion on the item? Alderman Meyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the item should be ratified, but as next step, I am already looking at how we can look at our entire purchasing department and how we work with not just the board level, but our city contracts, because I think that we should look at it. It hasn't been looked at since 2000. That's a very long time, and I think after what we heard say, there are some improvements that we can make. So, I'm not a person of surprises, so people can just look forward to seeing communication from me for a small working group that will be comprised, and I haven't figured that out yet, of how we look at that, because I think it is something that we're taking a look at. It's been a very long time, and with everything else, when it's been, 20 years, it's things in it that could possibly, be better. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Walker Myers. I see Alderman Morrison on the queue and then Alderman Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am in support of this item. I think that, as our president indicated, that it's very important that we continuously look at our policies on our side and make strong recommendations through our policies to make sure that other entities look at theirs. To not be in a position, written policy to say that things need to have at least a 365-day, time frame. That's, to me, when I hear that, that's just saying there's a systematic setup to allow the current guy to continue with the contract without trying to help to diversify. Also, I think that it's very important in looking at these procedures, and that's where we follow this, to also look at the importance of city contracts, city businesses, just like when they take tests for police and fire and all those different ones, you get an extra 10 points because of that, because our board has always wanted to make sure that we take care of home first. And then looking at our residents, this is important. And as I said to Mr. Golson on his testimony, it's important for residents to bring things to our attention, because there's a lot of things that's going on that we don't know, because we can't be everywhere, but the entire city are our eyes and ears. And as long as our eyes and ears are coming to this table, we have a responsibility to listen to those changes. So I am in agreement with reading this item, along with our president's, whatever she's going to do, because we have to make sure that we help our residents. So thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Morrison. Alderman Winter, then Alderman President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I am also in favor of reading filing, but I do want to thank members of the public for bringing this item to our attention. And I agree with my colleagues that there's certainly work for us to do in terms of updating policies here. And I think that two things that alarmed me the most. One was the structure of the one-year agreement with multiple usually agreed upon renewals. I think that's something we ought to be able to address. And then the second thing that also jumped out was my colleague from the 22nd Ward suggestion around the lead time that we have to receive and review proposals, particularly with some of these huge items. We've got multi-million or tens of $1 million contracts. We ought to have an advanced notice of what the process looks like, make sure that we are structuring the RFP process such that it's competitive and that we're maximizing the tax on. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Winter. Alderman Festa is next. I'm looking to see if any other colleagues wish to get up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I agree with what my colleagues have already said, so I won't repeat those, but I will add that it really isn't appreciated that loopholes were implemented to avoid coming before this board. And this has financial implications, and it's a disservice to elected officials and the residents of the city. So perhaps we need to, make a better effort to update these policies. Maybe work a little closer with the board of ed or closer with us to adopt some of these policies to ensure that there is no fiscal impact. We are the legislative body, we are responsible for the finances of this city, and it just is very disappointing and not appreciated that these loopholes were actually made possible. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I support the environment design.
Thank you all for that. Further comments from colleagues on this item? Seeing none, I'll make a few. I think the rules that govern how the city and the board of ed hire people enter into contractual arrangements with landlords and with subcontractors is very important. Because transparency is important, accountability is important. We know that value in terms of the city getting the best price for the work that it's done is important. But there are other values too, like supporting local enterprises, such as our 12.5 ordinance around minority and women-owned businesses. So it's good to have explicit and clear discussions about what our priorities should be when we enter into these arrangements with other entities and how you do that. And so I think we're overdue for a refresher on what the policies are now. And we should also know for the Board of Ed, it's a complex set of policies, right? Because there's city ordinances, there's Board of Ed policies, there's state law. Due diligence here is going to be about peeling back the layers of the onion. This is not a quick follow-up. I want to thank Mr. Goldson for being here. I have no doubt that his testimony was honest, sincere, from the heart, and that his perspective is valuable. But we have not heard all the perspectives. So I would caution us to be a little bit slow to reach conclusions when we don't have all the facts or all the perspective. But I think we've heard enough to know that there's some issues here that need investigation and follow-up. And so I'm happy to support the work that the president will. Of course, the president will set for us in doing the due diligence to follow what we need to do to investigate this issue. And I, of course, support the motion to file the item. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Okay, all that call. We'll take that as a yay. Okay, so we have gotten through our agenda. Before a motion to adjourn is appropriate, let me just give a quick heads up to colleagues that our finance meeting in October, we may need to change the schedule because of some holidays. So we'll be figuring that out soon. And guess what? It's going to be fiscal year 21-22 closeout meeting. And there's going to be state and federal compliance reports and the audited report from the last fiscal year. So it's going to be nerd budget night. I'm going to love it. Y'all will too. There's long reports to read. Please at least peruse them because we can't ask all the questions that we should be reading in our packs. Sometimes you don't need to ask a question if you read the whole thing as best as you were. So look for more information about that upcoming meeting. It'll be on a different night likely, and then the agenda will likely feature a bunch of reports and our requests for transfers in order to close on the last school year. Having said all that,
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to adjourn.
okay, seconded, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. We are adjourned.